Hi, I'm Jenny with Roots and Wings Furniture, and today we are going to talk about the ABCs of Rust-Oleum paint. So, are you ready to take a look? Let's do this. Okay, Rust-Oleum sent me a box of paint so we can paint together and see what we think of it. Let's see what they sent. I know I'm supposed to wait for the box opening to do it on video, but you guys, when you get a box on your porch, it is so hard not just to rip into it. So that's what I do. All right, this is Chalked Ultra Matte Paint in Coastal Blue. Let's see what this other one is. And this one is Rust-Oleum Milk Paint Finish in Kensington Gray. So I asked them to send me both the chalked, what is it called? It's called chalked paint and the milk paint, and I thought we would take a look at them and see what we think. Rust-Oleum is a little bit more of a household name. It's a little bit easier to find for many of you, so that's why I asked if they would send me their paint so we can see how it does. So let's jump into this. Let's start with the milk paint. So first of all, we're going to talk application. Let me read the back of the can here and see what they recommend for application. All it says for prep, remove the loose paint if there is any. Use a high quality synthetic brush. Okay, we can do that. Let's look at Chalked really quick. It says stir thoroughly. No primer is required. No thinning. Let's see. Again, use a high quality synthetic brush. Roller application is not recommended. All right, let's do this. So I'm going to use my Purdy brush for application. That's what I use most often. I love it. My favorite is the Purdy XL Cub. I like the 2-inch angle brush. It fits really nice in my hand, and the angle just allows it to get in any cracks or crevices. It's just enough of an angle. And someone asked this week if that's the brush that I recommend out of any of theirs. It is. I use it on my walls, on my trim. It's just the brush I use all the time. So that's what we're going to use today. All right, let's jump into this. Before we get started, let's talk about the surface prep. So on the back of the chalked can, it does say that we need to do some light sanding before we apply the paint. Light sanding, and then just clean it off. Clean off the dust, clean off with soap if it needs it. That's what it says, soap and water. This one doesn't really say any cleaning. It just says remove all loose paint. So we will just follow the directions. So I have, we're going to use this cabinet door here just to take a look at the paint the cabinet door. I have some 220 grit sandpaper, which is what I usually prep surfaces with. I'm just going to give it a really light scuff sanding. No big deal. And then spray it off with some water and clean it. I'll do this one at the same time. All right, let's check this out. So first of all, we're going to look at the consistency in the can, and that is a really pretty color. Look at that. Again, this is called Chalked in Coastal Blue. I'm going to give it a good stir in the can. It is really thick, but nice and smooth, and you can see how thick that is. All right, again, just using my Purdy brush here, and let's see what happens. I like the consistency of it. It is thick, but really nice and a smooth paint. It goes on really well. It does have a bit of an odor to it. Not super strong. But if you are sensitive to it, you might notice it a little bit more than other paints that I've tried. But definitely easy to work with. Let's talk about coverage. So it is adhering pretty well. The two things about coverage would be the adhesion as well as how many coats it needs to cover. So it looks like it's sticking just fine. Again, we did do that little light sanding just to kind of give it something to stick to. As for the coverage, it's gonna definitely need a second coat. I don't know how well you can see that. There is some of the wood showing through. This was a dark wood we're painting over, obviously, but this does have quite a bit of color saturation. So if it was going to cover with one coat, it should. So we're not seeing that. Would definitely need a second coat, but a really nice paint. Again, really smooth. And let's let it dry and see what happens. Okay, so while this is drying, let's dig in here to the milk paint. All right, so again, for the milk paint, I chose Kensington Gray. Looked really pretty. Let's open this, let's see what it looks like. Yep, that's really pretty. Nice medium gray. I like that. Give it a stir. See how the consistency is of this. Okay, so this is not quite so thick. Still a thicker paint, thicker than latex, but not quite as thick as the chalked paint. Again, nice and smooth. There's probably not a whole lot of need to stir. It looks really evenly distributed in the can. It didn't separate or anything like that. All right, and again, another pretty brush here. This one has about the same amount of smell, so it is a little more odorous than most decorative paints. Let's talk about coverage and adhesion here. So it's covering pretty well. Actually, this is a little bit of a lighter color. It is covering, I'm gonna say, better than the chalked version of this. It's going on nice and smooth. It's a really nice smooth paint. And I think it's gonna level pretty nicely. We'll see how it dries here. It would definitely need a second coat to completely cover. But if you were gonna give it a distressed look or maybe do a glaze over top, you may be able to get away with one coat on that. So there you go. That's what that looks like. Let's let this dry and check on our adhesion, how well it sticks, as well as the durability of it that we can see. Let's see how well this levels. Let me look here just with the smell that we have. It is water-based. It says clean brushes and tools with warm soapy water immediately after use. So it is water-based and you can recoat within an hour. So we're just gonna let this dry and I will be back with you in just a minute. All right, these are dry and the cans both say for both different types of paint, wait 30 minutes between coats to dry. I would say they would dry pretty well within an hour. So here's how this one dried. Let me show you. It looks a little bit streaky. I don't know why. I think if you were to apply a second or even third coat, it would really even out the color as well as the coverage. The coverage was better than I expected. When it dried, it did cover a lot better than when it was going on. It also dried quite a bit lighter than the paint in the can. So just something to know. I think if you were to seal this, the chalky finish would soak in some of the oil or wax or top coat, whatever you chose to use, and probably darken it back up a little bit. But it did dry quite a bit lighter than the paint when it's wet. You can see the difference there. Again, it is just a little bit streaky when it dried, and I am not exactly sure why that is. There's no top coat required. The can doesn't say anything about top coat at all. It says it is a one-step paint. That is what it is known for. So that's how the chalked finish turned out. It is super chalky, nice and flat. I do feel like it's self-leveled. While you can see some streakiness from the brush strokes, there's not the like divots from brush strokes. So it did level nicely, it dried nicely, and that would be a fun paint to use if you wanted a decorative finish. It says you can distress it after it dries for about an hour, and I think it would be easy to distress for sure. If I take my nail over it and kind of just give it a little scratch test, even after just drying it quickly, it doesn't scratch off. So this is going to be really durable over time, especially as it cures. It does feel maybe a little bit soft right now, and I'm sure that it would harden as time went on. So that is Rust-Oleum Chalked. It is a really pretty color. Their colors are a little bit limited. They don't have a ton of colors to choose from, but this one is really pretty. Again, this was Coastal Blue. So now let's take a look at the milk paint. Here is the milk paint finish. This one as well, the coverage did pretty well, especially when it dried. It's a really pretty color, a soft gray. This one is interesting because I feel like this is much chalkier than the milk paint, even though the milk paint is really flat. It's a really flat finish. It's not super smooth, but not really rough at all either. It's an interesting finish. I think with another coat, again, the finish would even out a little bit more. It would definitely need 2 coats to get a solid cover there. And I think it would distress really nicely, and you could do some decorative finishes with this as well. With the scratch test here, it comes off a little bit. I think the durability would be good, again, especially with a second coat of paint and allowed to cure for a good amount of time. I think even though this does not require a top coat, again, this is boasted as a 1-step paint. I would probably top coat it just to add some smoothness to it and give it maybe a little bit of shine, unless you wanted a totally matte look. So that is what the milk paint looks like. Kensington Gray, this is again a really pretty color. The colors on the milk paint are also fairly limited. There's not a whole lot to choose from, but they do have some kind of the classics there. So that's what that looks like. So that's what we have. Thank you, Rust-Oleum, so much for sending me these paints. It's great to try a different paint. If this is what you have available to you, I give it a thumbs up. It's a great decorative finish paint. It may not be quite as 1-step as some other paints. You can't just paint it once, 1 coat and be done. But with a little bit of working with it, I think it would give you a really nice finish on a piece of furniture. So here are the finished pieces. Thank you so much for joining me for the ABCs of paint. This again was Rust-Oleum. Thank you so much for joining me in this video, and we will see you again next time. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you would like to try Rust-Oleum products for yourself, check out the link in the description below where you can find the products I showed you today and so much more. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a thing, including the next paint review. I'll see you next time.